Hey everybody, welcome to Book Club. I'm your host this week, Dillon Crowder.
Ansel Crowder here.
And Elijah Crowder over here.
All right, and the book this week is The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. It's the first published novel in the Discworld series. Covers the story of a insurance salesman. Was he a salesman or like an adjuster? Or
I think he was a salesman because he sold some stuff to the people at
Right. So fantasy insurance salesman. You can find it on page 128 of your player's handbook. Traveling the Discworld with a kind of a fraudulent wizard, a wizard that only knows one spell. And that's pretty much it. The wizard's a coward, but he gets hired on as the insurance salesman's guide and translator, and they go on some wacky, zany adventures.
Could you, before we press on, could you describe the Discworld?
I mean, I could, but
you don't want to? That's fine. You don't have
to.
to.
I mean, it's a fantasy world. It's flat. It sets on the back of 4 elephants.
No, it's
on the back of a. It's held up by 4 elephants on the back of a giant turtle that's flying through space.
There you go. Very good.
Okay, yeah. So that sets us up.
So just in case you haven't read the book, we're probably going to be talking about the plot a little bit. So spoilers ahead. That's the basic plot of it. What are y'all's thoughts of it?
Elijah, you take it first.
You want me to go first? Okay.
I do.
You sure? All right. Well, it's funny. Just a few weeks ago, a colleague, a good friend of mine, suggested I read some Terry Pratchett, and it's been suggested to me many times before, and I've always been sort of I've avoided fantasy for the most part for a very long time. And this was a pleasant reintroduction, I would say, because it was funny. And I really, I was told Pratchett was funny, and I thought, I don't know if I'll find it funny. And then there's, he has such a huge catalog of stuff, and I thought, well, it can't be great if he's writing that much. And I don't know. I like being proved wrong. I thought it was good.
I'm surprised to hear you say that you've avoided fantasy for a long time.
Yeah, I was surprised
you're such a big Tolkien fan.
Yeah, you have like an encyclopedic knowledge of Middle Earth. I'm surprised that you avoided that genre.
That's part of that's part of the reason, I think, for me avoiding fantasy. That there were times that I would read stuff and just everything seemed to be just a ripoff of Tolkien. And, maybe that's not true. Maybe I'm just kind of a jerk that way, that I stick with something I like, be it Tolkien or Star Wars, and kind of throw the other stuff, what did they say the other day? Throw out the baby with the bathwater. Don't need to. Yeah.
The baby just needs a diaper change.
Yeah. Well,
we don't want to drown the baby.
I never changed that baby, and but I think it has a lot to do with being such a huge Tolkien fan that it's really hard for a fantasy novel to to do something new. I think. I don't know. Am I wrong on that, or?
I think so.
Yeah, you would agree with that?
No, I think you're wrong. Is what I was saying. I was answering your question.
Well,
I don't understand. I mean, I like. I don't know. I like. What do I like? I don't know what I like. I mean, I like rock music, right? But it's not like you're
not
zeroed in on Led Zeppelin and to hell with all these other. It's like, no, I gotta have more rock all the time, 24/7. So I guess I just don't get it. I mean, I'm not faulting you, but I just don't quite follow.
I
to be
understand
honest.
that, and that's 100% correct. I get that, but at the same time, rock is continually changing, and I still haven't made it through the Arcade Fire album because I'm not that hip. I can't move forward with things, I guess. But
I think hipness goes pretty quick. I don't know if Arcade Fire is considered hip anymore.
Yeah,
I think it's Tyler the Creator.
I've said this outside. nice name drop. I've said this outside of the
friend of the show,
the podcast. But I found out that I was old when the latest Weird Al album came out. And I didn't recognize any of the parodies that he was doing. I was
right.
It was still funny, but I just all of a sudden it made it apparent how out of touch I was with what is hip.
Well, you just don't have kids. I mean, I knew those songs just because my kids listen to pop music, and yeah, it's really the same thing. Pop music hasn't changed all that much.
I mean,
but yeah.
Here's the thing, though. I mean, if you take almost any fantasy novel, they seem to all revolve around the hero and some unfortunate bastard that's stuck on some magic object, and this grand adventure that takes forever for them to get somewhere. And there's always wizards and there's always elves, and it's. I mean, and if you play Dungeons and Dragons, at some point you've read fantasy novels where you thought, "Come on, we did better than this in a D&D session," and I got a lot of that, and it really
agree with you there. I do think that there's
turned me off on it for a good long time. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that there are formulas, like you said. There are always elves, nymphs, dragons, and it's. A lot of stuff in fantasy novels are cliche, I think so. There's that.
It sounds like y'all are due to read A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, I was just about to ask Elijah if you'd read any of the Game of Thrones books.
A Song of Ice and Fire.
No, I haven't seen it. I haven't read it. I avoid it like the plague. I don't want to get into it.
Well, I think you'll like it.
I think you'll really enjoy it. It like you're saying, it's not your typical fantasy. I would I'm going to say read the books before you see the show, but I mean the show's ahead of the books at this point.
Yeah, I mean I haven't read it, but I think it is kind of well known for sort of breaking free of the tropes of the fantasy genre.
Wait, how's the show ahead of the book? The author is still alive, is he not?
Yes.
I think he's like famously
deliberate.
Yes, that's
and also like he's gotten a fat stack of cash from this TV show. So I mean, he's not a starving artist anymore.
Yeah, but I mean, that's his story, and what is HBO just writing the way it's going to end?
From what I understand, like he's given like the outline to the show creators, because the show deviated from the books earlier. Some things they left out, some things they've added in and combined. So,
well,
this just made me think, though, not to sidetrack you here, but there is a fantasy cliche that even George R.R. Martin. It's a pitfall that he did not avoid. Have you noticed how like every fantasy novel has to be like the something of something? You know what I mean? Like Game of Thrones,
the Wheel of Time,
The Wheel of Time, The Lord of the Rings, the What did you say? The Storm of Crows or whatever? What did you say it was?
There's a Feast for Crows. That's one
Feast
of the
for
books.
Crows.
A Song of Ice and
Storm
Fire.
of Swords, right?
A Storm of Swords.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see? So, yeah, that's annoying.
The
but
Color of Magic. Speaking of, what do you think of The Color of Magic, Ansel?
actually, The Color of Magic, I got to be honest, I didn't much care for The Color of Magic, to be honest with you.
Why?
Ooh.
Crap, I wasn't prepared. No, I think, all right, I think, for starters, I don't think I was in the mood really to read this kind of book. That's not the kind of book I wanted to read. And that's one of the things about being a member of a book club is like you got to read a book even if you're not in the mood, which is not something I've ever done before. If I wasn't in the mood to read something, I just didn't read it, But apart from that, I think that I don't know. It was just the writing I liked, and I think that there's some Pratchett novel, or maybe it could be like every other Discworld novel I might love. I don't know. But this particular one didn't do it for me. And I think like he described the elves as being too clever by half, and I thought that's a really good way to describe this book. It's like too clever by half.
That's a very good point. Yeah, because I actually didn't enjoy it either. I enjoy fantasy, and I was always told that, like Elijah, like I would really enjoy. Like all my friends that have read Terry Pratchett novels have said, "Hey, this is right up your alley." There were several instances where it was very clever, but not a single time did I laugh out loud.
Yeah, I don't think I laughed out loud either.
And I mean, for me, it was compared to Douglas Adams and Kurt Vonnegut, and just this really, really funny novels, and it didn't hit me that way. There was some real clever use of language, but again, it didn't make me bust a gut.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like Dillon, I didn't laugh out loud. There are a couple of times I smirked. One that jumps to mind is, the little camera imp. Whenever he takes a picture, it's really just like
It's a
an
drawing.
imp the size of your thumb, who like sort of instantly draws the picture on paper, which is silly, whatever. But when they had taken pictures, it said that they had gone to the whore pits and they had taken pictures there, and then they tried to take a picture later, and the imp comes out and says, "We're out of pink, so everything's gonna have to be monochrome." That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And there's stuff like that, but it was just like a what was it, sensible chuckle,
Yeah, yes.
like one of those.
Sharply blowing air through your nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I actually really did like you were saying, his use of language, his turns of phrase, I think I really like, and I'm sure that there might be a particular Discworld novel that I just absolutely love, but I'm not interested really in reading them in sequence to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was fully prepared to absolutely love this novel, and I was just kind of left.
Yeah, as was
left disappointed.
Well, I've got to be honest. I'm not 100% prepared to defend it against. I mean, I've got the one little note I made of something I thought was, again, you're right. Not laugh out loud funny, but something I kind of snorted at. But I did find it funny, and I didn't find it on par with Douglas Adams. I find The Hitchhiker's Guide way funnier than this could ever be.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me jump in.
Yeah.
When was the last time you read Douglas Adams?
Just last year. I just read the whole Hitchhiker's thing just last year for the third time, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was wondering as I read this book, it's like this is a lot like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, totally. But I thought The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was funny, but I just started to wonder if I still even had the patience for Douglas Adams now, because it's been about 15 years since I read it. I don't know if I would still like it or not. Anyway, you were saying. I'm sorry to have interrupted you.
Oh no, I don't even remember what I was saying. It's fine. No, it wasn't that long ago that I read Douglas Adams, and you should do it again. I mean, it's funnier, I think, every time you read through it. And then I kind of have this feeling that I went into this this Pratchett novel not with expectations as high as what people had said I should have, and so I came out of it pleasantly surprised. So it may not be this wonderful, awesome thing, but then again, the fact I didn't take any notes really tells me that I just read it and kind of enjoyed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to be fair, like I enjoyed reading it as well. It wasn't like the Scarlet Letter where I had to slog through it and didn't even finish it in the end.
Yeah, it didn't feel like torture like the Scarlet Letter. I enjoyed this quite a bit more than that one.
But at the same, maybe it's just a matter of managing expectations. You just said like you didn't go into it with super high expectations. I did, and I left disappointed.
Because it had been recommended to me too, like for a long time. Like it was a perennial recommendation, so I was like, yeah, this is probably going to be just my cup of tea because these people know who I am. They like me. They know what I like, and they're recommending this to me because based on my taste, and I'm sure they're right, but they were all wrong. Every last one of them. Or maybe I would have liked it when I was 20 years old. I don't know.
I'm really interested. There's a novel that Terry Pratchett did with Neil Gaiman called Good Omens. I'm a fan of Neil Gaiman. I might check that out at a later date.
Was that the one that was Terry Pratchett died in the middle of one? Was that it? Or I think he made a Discworld novel, and somebody finished it for him.
I think his daughter might have finished one novel.
Okay, yeah.
He died fairly recently. I think it's been about a year or so since.
Really?
He
I thought it was
away.
like 10 years. I don't know.
I've got a question.
Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
What's the guy's name who wrote Sword of Thrones or whatever Game of Thrones?
George R.R. Martin.
Okay, his
And
middle
what does the
initials
RR stand
are
for, do you know?
R.R. Really?
Yes.
Are they? I mean, okay, right even there. Like I was talking about earlier, this guy can't even get a goddamn name that's original. I mean, just straight ripping from Tolkien. That can't really be his. I mean, or unless that was his name and he thought he was destined to write fantasy novels.
Like, have you seen the guy? I'm pretty sure he was destined to write fantasy novels.
Yeah, I've seen the guy. He looks like he ate Terry Pratchett, and grew his beard. But I mean,
I haven't
come
seen
on.
a photo of Terry Pratchett either. I don't know what he looks like.
He looks like a skinny George R.R. Martin.
See, George R.R.
With a
Martin
hat.
looks like he was meant to be a mall Santa Claus.
George R.R. Martin looks like a lost train conductor.
You're just saying that because of the hat and the suspenders and the way he looks.
Yeah, he was born George Raymond Martin. Apparently, he changed his name to George Raymond Richard Martin.
There you go. Something else that starts with R, so I can be like John Ronald Reuel Tolkien.
Well, I don't know. There might be a step parent or something. I'm not gonna make assumptions here. There could be
I'm just going to go ahead and put it out. I'm going to say it now. I'm not going to read or watch Game of Thrones. I've never had anything to do with it, and it annoys the piss out of me because it's all anyone ever talks about anymore.
Yeah, don't you want to be a part of that? Part
No.
of our civilization,
Absolutely.
Cultural
No.
zeitgeist.
Yes, the
No,
cultural zeitgeist.
absolutely.
Very
Maybe
nice.
that's what's wrong with the world. I don't know.
The cultural zeitgeist.
Well, see,
no,
that's
just
like
Game of
you're-
Thrones. I mean,
That's like the number one thing that a hipster does. Like, this thing is popular, therefore I do not like it.
You're right, and as you pointed out, that's how we evolve by not liking popular stuff. I mean,
Well,
I've got to.
that was kind of a joke.
I don't think I know anybody who's watched Game of Thrones and doesn't like it. I mean,
See, there you go.
I haven't seen it because I don't have HBO, but I'm sure. I bet I would love it.
I don't know, man. I don't know. It's dragons and eggs and people fighting, and I'd rather read Tolkien again than do any of that.
Okay, to each his or her own.
And I don't think it's a hipster thing to say. Every fantasy thing that I come across just reeks of things that I've already read or things that I enjoy better with someone else writing them.
You're speaking from a position of willful ignorance, though.
I am.
Yeah, what if it was like your favorite show ever? Aren't you curious? Like, because it's the genre that you probably like the most. I think. I'm a little bit annoyed that you won't even watch like one episode. Like, just come on, man, do it.
Well,
Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones.
But I feel I feel like I've seen more than one. I feel like I've seen more than one episode just by existing in humanity for the last 5 years.
Okay, all right. You're going to be stubborn. That's fine.
And to learn that it's not even the author that's writing the end of it. It's just like, okay, whatever. Who was the guy that wrote the Wheel of? Who was the guy that wrote the Wheel of Time?
That would be Robert Jordan.
And you know what? Now that I think about
it's Robert R.R. Jordan.
It's Robert R.R. Jordan.
Robert Jordan
right?
might be the one who died, and they finished it posthumously.
Yeah,
so I think that's what I was thinking.
Brandon Sanderson finished it up after he passed away.
Right.
And from what I remember hearing, like he gave the guy notes on how to finish it or something, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of what they've done with the HBO show. Like they have an outline and the notes and stuff of how George R.R. Martin wanted the show to go, and they're filling in the blanks.
Well, fair enough. And like you said, he's sitting on a ton of cash now, but yeah. And I think Dillon, you've even told me before that those books are excellent. They're
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something worth. I mean, you said yourself, Elijah, that you're never going to read the book. I don't know if you should. I don't know if you should make that claim because
you might not even have a choice in the matter.
You are in a book club.
Well,
who could very well choose that book.
Yeah, but we just did fantasy. It'll be a while, right?
Well, I mean, maybe, but maybe that book that's sitting on your shelf right now, and the wrapping paper, that might be.
Ooh, a little bit of foreshadowing there.
A clash of maces.
Come on now. The first book is called A Game of Thrones. The series
that's what
is called A Song of Ice and Fire.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Well, that's a pretty title.
That's like calling Empire Strikes Back Star Wars.
I get it. Yeah, I know what it's like. I didn't know what the books were called. Okay, or the series.
See, HBO's ruined him. He's already got it wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have a question about The Color of Magic that I was hoping either of you could enlighten me on. Like when you first meet the character Two Flower, kind of a halfling, I kind of took. He was a little bit shorter than everybody. They didn't really describe him.
I don't think so.
I think he was just a human.
Okay. I got that from somewhere, but he sold Insewer ants, INN-SEWER-ANTS, which is obviously he was an insurance salesman. But he was also protected by the reflected sound of underground spirits, and that was hyphenated like in sewer ants. I couldn't figure out. I kept trying to think, what is that? I mean, it's probably something trivial, but I can't figure out what that is. Were you able to figure out what the reflected sound of underground spirits was?
I stopped on that for a moment and tried like sounding it out and stuff, and
yeah.
After a brief moment, I just kind of moved on and figured it was over my
I've
head.
got nothing for that one.
Okay, I figured one of you guys could tell me.
Maybe someone out in the community, the listenership, can let us know what that's all about.
Or maybe I don't know. Do we have a computer or something like that we can use?
What was the term again?
The reflected sound of underground spirits.
Reflected sound of underground spirits.
This was the thing that protected Two Flower from his doom. And while he's looking that up, how did you pronounce the wizard's name? I pronounced it Rincewind. What did?
That's how I pronounced it as
okay.
well.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, Two Flower was
All
also
right, so-
protected by that box that ate people.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That would be nice to have.
I like that. That was neat.
Okay. It's as an actuary, he also introduces the concept of economics, reflected sound of underground spirits, or economics, as gnomes.
Gnome. Yeah, I like gnomes.
Okay.
Maybe it's not that this book isn't funny, but we're just dumb
too
as
dumb
hell.
for it. Yeah, maybe. That's always a possibility.
Well,
Okay. Yeah, so
I've
that's,
got something about the book. That was cool. I did like the box that ate people. That's kind of a throwback to Dungeons and
The
Dragons
luggage.
as well. But
Yeah.
it wasn't just a mimic of a chest. You know, it was actually running around and was what was it? It was made of pear
It was
wood.
sapient pear wood. Is what they call it.
Sapient pear wood. That was
Sapient
cool.
pear wood. Yeah.
So I
Which, to
I
be
made
fair-
this one. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, that luggage was totally OP. That's overpowered in game speak.
Well, okay. Well, magic couldn't destroy it. It could float. Yeah, it was a little unbalanced. Anybody who took on that. But I mean, he was. He didn't attack anybody unless they.
Man, it was malicious. It would show them the gold. It would like hang its lid open and show them all the gold pieces inside and wait for someone to stick their hand in, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it was like a Venus flytrap.
Yeah, I thought that was.
But yeah,
pretty
you were about to say something. E.
Yeah, there was where was it? Where they get to the edge of the world? What was that place called?
The Rim.
There you go, Rim. There was a fish, and Rincewind, I believe, was the character who says he was looking at the fish and says he wonders what kind of life it would be having to keep swimming all the time to stay exactly in the same place. Pretty similar to his own life, he decided, and that made me chuckle. That was a good little. I mean, with the dropout wizard that dropped out from Wizard College, he was funny to me. His cowardice and just the antithesis. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. The antithesis, the antithesis of what all of these old wizards are in these books. He was everything the opposite, and that was right on. Where he looking at this fish swimming in one spot and going, "Hey, there's me." That's.
Yeah, I think, he was a lousy wizard. He knew one spell, but it was the most powerful spell, one of the 8, which 8 also was, like, everything was octarine. Everything was octo or blah, blah, blah.
Octarine is the color of magic.
It is the color of magic, yes.
Oh, that's the name of the book.
Yeah. Which reminds me, I thought the whole time, like the nationality of Terry Pratchett. He's American, right? Or no? I don't know. The only reason I say that is because he spelled color COLOR.
Well, I think that's like an Americanized title. I think originally it was CO.
No, I don't think they would do that.
I think I've seen it both ways. Yeah, he's an Englishman.
Well, I'll be damned.
He's an Englishman that can spell color. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, check that out.
Okay, yeah, Dillon pulled it up here and on Wikipedia,
Which is always right.
Which is always right. It's spelled the color of OUR.
Yeah. Friends of the show.
So, yeah. Crap, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah, you were talking about swimming in place and not getting anywhere. There were a lot of things that I thought were pretty good. I thought, like I said, his turns of phrase, is that the plural of turn of phrase, or is it turn
Yeah.
of phrases? Turns of phrase?
Turns of phrases.
Turns of phrases. I thought his turns of phrases were quite nice a lot of the time. But I don't know, just like, all right, so like certain things in the pacing kind of sucked for me. Like, the fact that he never actually uses that spell that he that they kind of worked up to. I thought for sure we would see it. Not that was the worst part of the book, but like the whole thing with the gods playing D&D, that was kind of tortured a little bit. I don't know, like it just seemed unnecessary. I mean, there was stuff like that. I just didn't think this was a work of art in any way. I don't really think that I ever need to revisit this book again. But
I don't want to.
It was enjoyable enough.
I don't want to interrupt, but I do. You didn't think it was. You didn't think it was funny that when the gods rolled the dice, the characters actually heard it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was clever, but too clever by half. Again, and like another example is like when they're falling from the dragon, when Two Flower passes out for whatever. I don't know why he passed out. He just sort of like.
Well, I imagine they got too high and ran out of oxygen.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And they're falling back to the disc. They all of a sudden end up on a plane flight to New Jersey or something like that.
Right.
And that was just stupid. It was just dumb. But whatever.
Yeah, that was.
Logic, got anything to add to that?
Yeah, that was a bit of a stretch, but that was the part where I really thought about Douglas Adams. I mean, and I forget how they even.
Yeah, it was like the
off.
improbability
Maybe.
drive. It was a lot like Douglas Adams.
I mean, I forget what they use as a plot mechanism to write it off in this book, but their names were the same. But
there was no reason for that to happen. He needed them to fall back to the disc without dying, and that was what he came up with. And that got past his editor. And the people he let read before it was published. But anyway,
I don't know. I found it to be funny too. I mean, not laugh out loud funny again, but it was funny, and it was refreshing. It was refreshing to see a fantasy novel that is not to be taken seriously. I think that's what I enjoyed about it, and I think that's why I went through reading it and not making notes. It was because I could read it and not have to force myself to take it seriously at all. And that was, considering that horrible choice I made to do the Scarlet Letter, and
but again, you say it's refreshing that they're subverting the tropes that you're not familiar with because you refuse to absorb any of this media. Like,
that's completely.
You can't be refreshed. You can't be refreshed if you haven't been freshed before.
I've been freshed before.
I think I'm not gonna. Unlike you, I'm not going to question Elijah's fantasy credentials. I think he's probably at least a blue belt, if not a black belt, or maybe a yellow belt with gray trim.
But it's like a blue belt in one discipline. When they're, you got your taekwondos, you got your jujitsus, you got your krav maga.
The man who chases many rabbits catches none of them.
I got nothing on that. I got no response.
I also have no rabbits. Look, I've been fresh. All right, I'll give a couple of examples. I don't know if we'll have time to stick them in, but I read it was Terry Goodkind was the author, and he did this Sword of Truth series, late 90s, early 2000s. It was supposed to be the new fantasy, whatchamacallit. And you go through and as you're reading it, it's like, okay, this character is like Gollum, except he's addicted to a sword and not a ring. And this character is Aragorn. He's just fueled by honor. And this guy is the reluctant hobbit hero. I mean, they're even halflings, you know what I mean? And I think at some point in that book they end up getting locked into like an S&M dungeon with a bunch of priestesses, and I was like, okay, this is new, but doesn't fit, you know? But, I mean, they had to go that far to do it, to do something new after they've done all this simulacra. That's the literary term for, you get to a point in literature where almost everything is directly reflecting something else that came before it. And whether that's to flip the tables, as you said, or to basically rip it off. I mean, flattery, imitation, that whole deal. There's it just can't be done better than it was done by Tolkien. And I can say that without reading the other RRs who've come afterwards. And yes, that sounds like a very... Well, it sounds like a very hipster and a very standing on a point of ignorance, but I've done it. I've tried it. I've read tons of fantasy and just always felt that I was pissing in the wind and wasting my time.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I can't really recommend or say anything because I'm not really that well versed in fantasy. I mean, I've read Tolkien, but not much. You know, I've read him. Like, I never read the Silmarillion. I never read anything outside The Hobbit and the Lord. Did he do anything outside of The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings? I don't even know.
No, there were a couple other things, but yeah, that was pretty much the Silmarillion, and that was it.
But yeah, I mean, it does from an outsider's perspective, like as somebody who doesn't read a lot of fantasy books, it does seem pretty formulaic and.
Well, I mean, no doubt, like all fantasy is built upon the back of Tolkien, but
he's like the great Atuin for fantasy.
Yes. But I just don't think you can generalize like that. That just
yeah, I would totally
doesn't sit well with me.
Just from what I've heard, and like if a Song of Fire and Ice,
a Song of Ice and Fire,
I was closer that time.
Yep.
If it was just your standard fare fantasy, it wouldn't get the attention that it's getting. You know what I mean? It's I don't know anything about it, but I do know that it is different. It's not necessarily even groundbreaking or trailblazing, but it's maybe subverting the genre a little bit. If not subverting them, but maybe building. It's definitely different, and I think like it's a little bit. I think you should at least give it a shot. But again, this is coming from somebody who's never read A Song of Ice and Fire.
There you go.
And has never seen this the series it has spawned, Game of Thrones. But I'm going to give it a shot. I mean, I imagine in the book club eventually we'll get to that book.
And it will be a waste of time.
See?
Yeah.
I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to put a star next to this episode. So, and like after we do read it and you love it, I'm going to play this clip and just kind of rub it in your face and say, "I told you so."
It'll be kind of like a feast of would one might say.
It would be like a feast of crows. Yeah, you would be. Except,
oh wait, no, that's not the saying. It'd be a feast of feet.
no, he would be. What's the expression? Eating crow.
Yeah. So
Are you saying I'm going to eat crow?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a feast of crows.
Yeah, but instead of like crows eating something, it would be you eating crow. Yeah. That's going to happen.
It would be me eating a murder of crows.
Well, all right.
But it's not gonna happen because I'm not gonna read it. But yeah.
Anything else we want to get to as far as Color of Magic?
Yeah, let me say this. Okay, I think Color of Magic. It was made up of like 4 short stories. Really, it was just 4 chapters. So talk about
like four separate adventures.
Yeah, 4 separate mini adventures in the book. So like, I want to kind of hear from you guys what your favorite of the adventures is. And I'm going to any, meeny, miny, mo. Elijah, you go first.
Phew.
All right, I can tell you what the 4 adventures were, okay?
Yeah, do that.
All right, so the first is the Color of Magic. I guess this is where they...
That was the city on fire.
that was Ankh-Morpork.
That was where they burned the city down, yeah.
Yeah. That was the first adventure. The second adventure is the Sending of 8. That's where they go into that Soul Eater's cave. Or not really, or a temple, not a cave.
Yeah.
And
And that was the D&D episode.
Yeah. I mean, I think the whole thing was the D&D episode, but this is where it became clear that they were playthings for the gods. So that was the Sending of 8. There was the one, I'm pulling it up now, but it was the dragon one on Wormberg. Is that what it was called?
The Upside Down Mountain.
The Upside Down
Wormberg.
Mountain, where magic dragons do live. The Lure of the Worm is what it's called. And then the final chapter was the one where they are put on they're to be sacrificed on the ship that goes over the edge just to find out what gender Atuin the Great Turtle is. So of those 4 stories, Elijah, which one do you like the best and why?
I'm gonna have to go with the dragon one, the Wormberg.
Interesting.
And I'll give a few reasons why. The whole device where they were running around upside down they had hooks on their boots.
Yeah, those hook boots. Yeah,
that would hook into loops, and it mentioned the weird things it would do to the naked women's anatomy.
I don't think they were naked.
That was.
I think they were.
Yeah,
they were like barbarian people
they were
that were scantily clad.
Right.
Okay.
I found that to be that actually was pretty cool for a fantasy thing. It's silly, but at the same time, I found it to be pretty cool. But the fact that the barbarian, what was the barbarian's name?
Haroon or Harud?
Something like that.
Yeah.
There were a couple of barbarians.
Haroon is the one I'm thinking about. Yeah. Anyway, when he like wins and they think they're rescuing him, and he's about to become married to this gorgeous barbarian woman and become a king of this dragon mountain, and they snatch him away from all that. That was hilarious. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, he gets snatched back though. He does end up back in the arms of the.
Does he?
Doesn't it end like that? I can't remember.
I don't remember. I did think I did think that the dragons were pretty interesting, pretty good subversion of your typical fantasy dragons, and that they were based on your imagination.
Right.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty neat.
That was cool. Also, Death, the character Death, always like sort of, being a corporal entity that sort of followed him around. I thought that was pretty well done, pretty cool.
Yep. Death was funny for a change.
Actually, I think I highlighted something that may be my favorite thing from this book, if you'll bear with me for a second.
I really liked how Death's dialogue was described. Because, he was a skeleton. He didn't have a tongue.
Yes, yeah.
That's right.
Okay, yeah, I highlighted this. It seemed like poetry at the time, but now I'm not so sure. I do still like it, but it says, his words drifted across Death's scythe and split tidily into 2 ribbons of consonants and vowels. That's how sharp his scythe was. If you so much as spoke, your words were cut. I was like, wow, that's stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, Terry Pratchett, I bet. He's got the goods. I'm sure there's some novel that I'm positive. Yeah. I'm 100% sure there's one of his novels that I'm absolutely just gonna be like, oh yeah, this is the stuff right here.
Yeah, I can agree with that. He's very, very imaginative, very clever, sometimes too clever, and yeah, good with them words.
Wordsmith.
He's
Uh,
good with them there words.
my favorite
Dillon,
my favorite adventure, unless you got something else.
No, I was going to say go ahead with your favorite
Okay.
of the four.
Okay. Yeah, of the four, I think my favorite is probably the journey into the Soul Eaters temple. Just good atmosphere. It was suspenseful. It was kind of spooky. You also had the dryad. And it was, I don't know, maybe since it was more what's the word, like stock fantasy, I guess, but still with that same wry sense of humor and the same characters.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. It reminded me a lot of was it Khazad-dûm and the Fellowship of the Ring, or is that some other?
Yeah, the Mines of Moria.
Yeah, the Mines of Moria. It kind of reminded me a lot about that. A lot of that. But that's interesting because my favorite was actually, I don't even ever think I said the name of the last chapter. It was called, doesn't even say, Close to the Edge. This is where they're sent over the edge. That was my favorite chapter. I'm not sure why. I think it really did sort of subvert the genre. It was like sci-fi. It was more sci-fi, I think. Than,
Kind of steampunky.
Yeah, a little steampunky. I'm into that steampunk. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Well, to me, I guess now the reason I liked the last chapter, it did seem like a real climax to the book. I know you had the four separate adventures, but the fourth really had a sense of urgency and climax, and I like that. Maybe that's what was missing from the other chapters for me. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
All
That's
right.
a good question.
Elijah, you got anything else?
No.
Okay, cool. One thing I wanted to talk about is, and we've been talking a lot about fantasy in general, but I did want to talk about, it seems like, science fiction kind of has become, I can't, my words are kind of escaping me. Like science fiction is more
fiction and less science.
Well, no.
Too much science, not enough fiction.
Let me get my thoughts in a row here. Science fiction, and not just inside the world of books, like movies and TV shows, things like that. It's kind of become more critically acclaimed, like more closer to high literature than it was previously. But I don't see that fantasy has made that same leap. Like I think people mostly think of fantasy as, just like pulp entertainment. And I just wanted to get y'all's thoughts on that. Like, why is that so? Is that so? I mean, even with the immense popularity of first you had the Lord of the Rings movies and then the Game of Thrones TV show. It's very popular, but it's still at the same time not held in high regard within like academic circles.
That's interesting. I'm struggling to really see where sci-fi is held to such a. I mean, I don't know of many sci-fi instances that would be considered high literature either.
I definitely think,
But
like Fahrenheit 451, off the top of my head. I, Robot, maybe. I think with science fiction, it's easier to use science fiction to kind of hold up the mirror to humanity. I mean, you've got androids, what it doesn't mean to be human. There's some themes there that can be discussed as as literature, but are the themes there for fantasy? Are they not?
I think, in my opinion, I don't really know
it that way.
Somebody who doesn't read fantasy or like follow the genre, but I do think that it's still like a fringe, or fringe probably isn't the right word, but it's not mainstream at the very least, and I think that's changing now. Like with Game of Thrones, the TV show, not Song of Ice and Fire, but Game of Thrones. The TV show, like you do get people like, I mean, you get people writing reviews that have like a feminist perspective or a how the people of color are treated, or LGBT issues within Game of Thrones. So it does have that cachet. I think the show does, and I think it's only a matter of time before it inspires a new crop of writers who sort of really get it there into the mainstream. And I could be completely wrong, I don't know, but I think that's why, because it's kind of like, it's a little bit like I mean, Dungeons and Dragons itself is a good example. Like why don't they have Dungeons and Dragons teams in high schools? Well, it's because only the really, really pale people play Dungeons and Dragons. My apologies. I think the listener base we have is gone now. I'm sorry, but
Here's the thing.
You guys, I don't know if you guys will ever want to talk to me again, but
I think that used to be the case. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that fantasy and we've seen it, like geek nerd culture, quote unquote. It has become mainstream in the past 10, 15 years.
True. Here's my take on it. I think if you're looking at stuff like you said, like Asimov and then Philip K. Dick and these things that really you could use to hold up a mirror to society and say, okay, 1984 or Fahrenheit 40, is this where we're going as a people? These are science fiction tends to look to the future. Yes, would agree there.
Yeah,
okay.
I would say so.
Well, I mean, and if you look at fantasy, I mean, what it is right there in the title. It's frivolity. It is a fantasy, and I think you hit on it there too, Ansel. Why are there no D&D teams in high school? Well, I think most of society would see this as a frivolous waste of time, delving into these fantastical realms, and you really don't get I don't know what the word I'm searching for here is either. My words are escaping me. I think they've gone over the edge, to tell you the truth. But you see what I'm saying? There's fantasy, and that's what it is. And I'd never really thought about it, but you're totally right. Science fiction does have that ability to become high literature when it's well written. And I think fantasy just that, and then I would also go back to my earlier point that we've seen it all before. It's nothing new. We haven't had anything new in forever, and I don't know. That's my take on that.
Well, I just thought of something, and there may be something to this or not. I can't remember exactly what you said, Elijah, that made me think this, but there's again, there might not be anything to this, but I think science fiction as a genre, like, sort of exists in its own bubble in a way. It doesn't tread on other genres, and I do think that fantasy, high fantasy, and sword and sorcery type stuff, it does kind of tread on Christianity a little bit, I think, like, because it deals with like creation and spells and all that. And I think, I mean, if you think about the successful fantasy books, like a lot of, I mean, like the Chronicles of Narnia or something like that, it's really like a reboot of the Bible. It's not something that, I don't know. I think that it might be an invisible barrier to the world of high art, I think is what you said, because it sort of undermines this the Christian. I don't know the Christian. What's the word? Zeitgeist.
Zeitgeist,
Yeah,
yeah.
the zeitgeist is what you said earlier.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Again, it's
That's
possible.
a good point. That's a really good point.
Elijah, I don't want to just brush over that. That was a very good point.
Yes, it was, Elijah. I agree with you too.
Well, no, I was talking about your point. But anyway, like Elijah, even within the Lord of the Rings, you said it's all been done before. Even I don't see the Lord of the Rings getting the same kind of critical academic look. Like it's more just for your entertainment. Even though there are some themes there, you got your warfare, you got your
Right. The mechanization of warfare is a main theme in the Lord of the Rings.
Right, and industrialization of non-industrialized areas, things like that. Do you still see Lord of the Rings the same way? Is it just being fantasy?
That's a good question. I really don't think I do. I think I see it as fantasy, and I think I see it as the epitome of fantasy. And even a lot of the literature classes I took, I would get so sick to death, and Shakespeare is what I use as the common example of this, of just reading something and beating it to death to try and twist meanings out of things that just, maybe that's something that the author was dealing with, but you lose the ability to read a story as a story when you do that. And when you look at the Lord of the Rings and you see the mechanization, for instance, of warfare, that's something he dealt with in the trenches of World War I. And yes, it spilled over into the page. It doesn't detract or add to, I think, the fantasy that he created for that world, that realm that he created. So I'd say no to answer that.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah. And to get back to Ansel's point, you and your devils playing your D&D in the woods with your little dices. That's bad. Yeah, you do your little seances with your candles and your spells and just you do it on Sunday. You know you do it on Sunday.
I don't appreciate you making fun of me like that. The things I say. I'm
telling you, it's the Lord's Day, and
because
y'all not do that.
That so sounds like me. I did see there was this not that related at all, really, but I guess I mentioned Led Zeppelin earlier. This is a newscast I saw like when I was 15 or something like that on Mississippi TV. And they were talking about people like distracted drivers. This was before cell phones, so like I'm sure this lady probably had a heart attack since then. But they were talking about distracted drivers, and they interviewed just this random person, this old lady, and she was like, "They need to turn down the Led Zeppelin and keep their eyes on the road." And this is like well into like
the 90s.
Yeah, this is like Limp Bizkit and Slipknot were already out. And she thought Led Zeppelin was distracting. I don't know.
They're blaring that Led Zeppelin and drinking their dope.
Yeah.
To be fair, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but Elijah, like you refusing to read other fantasy novels, that's like listening to Elvis Presley and being like, okay, that's good. I'm good on rock music.
It's a little bit weird
for all time.
Or like it's like reading an L. Ron Hubbard novel and saying like, nope, no Wikipedia for me. I'm not gonna see how this fares against something else.
Well, I'm not reading any L. Ron Hubbard.
Again, you don't.
You might not. When someone has the conch, they have the conch.
Yes, the conch.
It's it's not an outright refusal, and if it's brought onto the show, I will read it. It's not an outright refusal to read it. What I'm saying is, all the things that I've read over the last few years, they just pale in comparison, and the reason that there is a comparison is like you said earlier, all fantasies built on the back of Tolkien. It's all just straight ripped from Tolkien. There's not been anything, and I'll read this Song of Fire and Wind or whatever whenever we get to it.
No, come on now. Like, Tolkien was also building on the fairy tales of Europe. Also, like, it wasn't all. Like, yes, he is the godfather of fantasy, but it all didn't just spring from his head. I mean, you had elves and fairies and goblins and everything well before Tolkien.
That's another episode. That's a discussion for another episode, because that's not entirely true. What he did with his works was like nothing that had been done before that. The idea of elves being immortal was never done before. The idea of, I mean, almost all of it. Yeah, there is some like basic background fables, but the universe that he created has not been topped and has been rehashed and reused and repackaged and resold by so many people that, and I'm sure if I read it, and maybe it's just me, but when I read something else, I can pinpoint it. I can see it, because I have read the Silmarillion. I have read all the several times. I have read all the things that he didn't finish and that his son finished later. I've read the things that had nothing to do with Middle Earth, so to speak. It's not an outright refusal. I'm just speaking from experience that nothing that I've done and nothing that I've read fantasy wise has been worth the time. I could have been reading Tolkien again.
Okay, well, okay, I think you do have a point, Elijah. I do think that a lot of people, a lot of aspiring writers, read The Lord of the Rings and they're like, "Oh, this is what I want to do." I think there's a lot of that, and probably most fantasy maybe, but. I don't know. I was talking about like my analogy for me would be like rock music, but it would be like me saying, going back to, well, let me use, and instead of Led Zeppelin, let me say like the Beatles. Like that would be like me saying, well, they did it. The two guitars, bass, and drums. They perfected it, the harmony, and like I can hear it in everybody else's music. People. If I wrote off or if I dismissed every two guitar bass drums band that sang harmony, I couldn't really call myself a music fan,
Right. And I want to, using that same analogy, or the analogy of music, I kind of want to defend Elijah here. Like, I can't stand to hear Beatles covers. I can't stand to hear a Bob Dylan cover like that. It's not as good as the original, so I get that aspect of it. But there are people that do things in the same genre that are totally worth experiencing.
Yeah, the thing that immediately comes to mind, you remember that Spoon album that you liked? Ga.
Six Guys.
Six Guys.
Ga to the sixth power.
It would be six Ga. It would be Ga to the sixth power. It would be a lot of guys.
Oh, yeah. Six Ga in parentheses. I'm sorry.
So, and there's some songs on that album that are like really Beatlesy, but it's like still really cool. Like it's really good. I mean, it's like they're using the same color palette and doing something that's not even necessarily new, but something really interesting and pleasing with it. So, I see
what you're both saying, and. I want to say that here's where that analogy breaks down. Oasis did Beatles.
I didn't say anything about Oasis. I was talking about Spoon.
And they suck. No. Here's what I want to say: the music, the rock music. There's constantly being new things done. It's you can take your four members and your two guitarists and your one or whatever, and you can always hammer out something new. There's always new, fresh, cool stuff coming out as far as music goes. There's a lot of shit that comes with it, but there's a lot of cool stuff that comes along. And I don't think that's the same for the fantasy genre.
I think that's probably really true. Don't. I think not only is it true for the fantasy genre, I think it's probably true for every genre and every art form. But you just have to I think for fantasy, you probably have to actively seek it out. I mean, it's not something that you're going to read about on the front page of whatever newspaper you read.
Right, and I think part of the problem that you run into is with fantasy. A lot. You mentioned Terry Goodkind. I don't know for sure if the books you read from him were set in the Forgotten Realms universe, but
No, they weren't.
they weren't. Well, like I really enjoyed the R.A. Salvatore's Legend of Drizzt series, which was set in the Forgotten Realms universe, which is like the Dungeons and Dragons stock universe, and it's I mean it. No doubt, Dungeons and Dragons borrows heavily from Tolkien. You've got your elves that live for thousands of years. You got your halflings, which are essentially hobbits. So, like when you write, and there are tons of novels written in that universe, and when you write with that framework, you kind of have to. It's set up to mimic that Tolkien universe, so it does. I mean, that's pretty much all there is to that.
Right, and I will say that I've enjoyed some Dungeons and Dragons novels. I also like Drizzt, but I mean, but you've got to think that those are novels coming out of mostly writers and writers who use that system to game and create
like without
characters.
a doubt, Drizzt and his companions, like that was a D&D game that got turned into a book.
That was a campaign, right?
Yeah.
There you go. And those were that was a fresh new take on the same old stuff. I don't consider myself a hardcore fanboy. I don't want to come across as this hipster hardcore Tolkien worshiper. But maybe I am. Maybe that's the problem.
The expression on Dillon's face is that you do come across that way.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I mean, I feel like I've wasted 30 minutes defending something that should never
I think
be
this
assailed.
is a good
but
discussion. I enjoyed it immensely.
I'm not saying I don't like Tolkien. Like I love.
He just
I
can't
love
get over
Tolkien.
the fact that you're not even willing to try the potato salad, like even though it's mustard based.
I don't like mustard based potato salad.
Okay.
Hate it.
Okay. Well, I'm sure aspects of this discussion will come up again at some point. It's like a hydra. It'll keep rearing them ugly heads.
Yeah, that's true.
But for now,
I'll try to keep
for
it
now,
down.
I think it's time to unless anybody has any objections, I'm going to pass the conch over to Ansel.
Last comment. I think if you were to read some more fantasy, Elijah, you would have some more ammunition for your point of view or your argument. But until then, like basically what I'm saying is next time you come stateside, better bring your stuff because we're coming for you.
And
I got my stuff all ready, homie. Don't worry about it.
I can get you my HBO Now subscription information so you can just get on that Game of Thrones.
No.
That's being edited out because we don't share.
Oh shit! you would download a car. All right, is it time to pass the conch?
No, you didn't ask for our ratings, Dillon.
Oh shit! I totally forgot ratings.
I did too. Let me go last because I didn't even think about a rating.
Okay, Elijah, you go ahead.
I got to go first. Shit, no.
I'll go
I
first.
reminded you about ratings. Yeah, go first, Dillon.
Okay, and I don't know how you're going to put this into a picture, Ansel, but my rating is,
This is
losing your virginity. and here's my.
I'm going to need some guidance. On
Okay,
how
well, let me explain it.
to, please do.
Like, okay, so like we mentioned earlier, like I mentioned earlier, like Terry Pratchett has been recommended at pretty much everyone I've talked to about books is like, oh, I love fantasy. I like Douglas Adams. Oh, have you ever read Terry Pratchett? Read Terry Pratchett. So it's been built up and built up and built up in my mind. And much like losing your virginity, neither of you know what you're doing. There's no way that it lives up to expectations. Like, it's just, I mean, it's okay, but I thought it was going to be so much more than that.
Okay, yeah. All I need is for you to give me some.
Put that into a picture.
Yeah,
for you.
put it into emojis for me. Like, you can think about it. You don't have to do it now. Think about it and get back to me.
Okay.
It would be. I've got an idea for the emojis for that. All right. All right. My rating is I'm going to give it a 15 on a 20-sided die.
Ooh. I like that.
It's not a natural 20. But I don't think it was meant to be. I don't think it's meant to be taken as a super fantasy novel. I think it's a fun read, and it's pretty funny in places. And I didn't find it too clever. And yeah, it's a 15 out of 20. It's a good roll.
It's probably a hit after you add in all your bonuses, depending on what your character's attributes are.
You know. He is Sir Terry Pratchett, so yeah, it was a hit.
All right, you got one calculated? I got one, yeah. I'm gonna give it the Circle K. One Circle K, and I'll tell you why. When we were doing the Scarlet Letter, we were talking about what the sequel to the Scarlet Letter should be. One of us should have thought of the sequel to the Scarlet Letter should be the Circle K. But
so you're just doing that now.
And I'm doing it now for two reasons. If it actually works, because so much of the Color of Magic was sort of non sequiturs based on other things,
media.
No, not based on other media. It's taking a genre
thing,
and it's sort of using the parameters of that genre, and not it's kind of casting it in an interesting light.
Yeah.
So I'm taking our rating system in the spirit of the Color Magic. I'm taking something old, i.e., the episode from 2 weeks ago, and I'm decorating this with. Yeah, it actually works if you think about it,
and it's also like okay, like it was an okay book.
There you go. Yes, thank you. So, yes.
All right, last call. We passing this conch.
I believe it's time.
Give me the conch blue balls a little bit. All right, so before you left back to Vienna, I gave you a package. It was actually, you remember that thing I gave you that was wrapped in gift wrap?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Underneath that gift wrap is actually a book. And that book is going to be next week's, or the one we club on 2 weeks from now.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Open it up.
So should I open it?
Yeah, go for it. What do you see there?
It's dark in here. What is it?
It says Paddle to the Amazon, the ultimate 12,000-mile canoe adventure by Don Starkell.
So let me, this is Paddle to the Amazon. It's the ultimate 12,000-mile canoe adventure by Don Starkell. This is...
Interesting.
It's a, we'll talk about it in depth, but the reason I did it, the reason I gave it to you is because this isn't available as an ebook, and I didn't think you'd be able to get it in Vienna. So
okay,
so
cool.
that's
Thank
why I did this did the reveal this way. The interesting thing about this is not so much that this is a nonfiction book that we're doing. The most interesting thing is that we're going to have a super special secret surprise guest come to our book club with us to discuss this book.
Ooh.
So it's very exciting.
Very exciting.
I'm titillated.
So that's what we have to look forward to.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. Well, full disclosure, I didn't actually have the package. It's in the bedroom. The baby's asleep. I had a clean poop sack for when I walked the dog, and I just crinkled it over the microphone.
It was convincing. You totally
Yeah, it
fooled
sounded
me.
good.
Did it work? Okay, cool. So yeah, sorry about
It's
that.
dark
I forgot to
in
get
here.
it out there before I put the baby to bed.
Oh, that's great. Well, awesome. Y'all go out and pick
But
up Paddle to the Amazon. Read it with us over the next couple of weeks, and we'll discuss it over Twitter and Reddit. Twitter's at Bookclubcast. Reddit is reddit.com/r/bookclubcast. We got a website, bookclubcast.com.
Semantic satiation.
Yep. Done it again. We're working on getting
Semantic
Facebook
satiation.
groups set up. They might even be set up by now.
Yeah, by the time of release, we may have a Facebook page ready to go. But Twitter, you can tweet at us all day.
Tweet at us, and if we like your thoughts, we're totally gonna steal them and put them in the pod. We might give credit where credit is due.
Okay.
That's
Anything
how we
else, guys?
I'm good where
It's
I'm
been
at.
fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you for book clubbing.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye now.
This eagle's place is in the sky. She's still got a lot of flying to do. You can see it in her eye, though she's cried a bit for what we've put her through. She soared above the lifted lamp that guards sweet freedom's door, in the dews, the damps, the watchfires of a nation torn by war. Oh, she's far too young to die. You can see it in her eye. She's not yet begun to fly. It's time to let the mighty eagle soar once more. Let the eagle soar like she's never soared before, from rocky coast to golden shore. Let the mighty eagle soar, soar with healing in her wings, as the land beneath her sings. Only God, no other kings. Let the mighty eagle soar. This country's far too young to die.